Hello, welcome to this next part of the tower. I hadn't intended this to be two parts, but when I was just UV mapping in preparation for the texturing, I realised that the initial model is not necessarily the finished model. So in my UV mapping process, I've separated it out, I've put my seams in, I found some issues, I fixed them, that's normal. UV mapping is a fun job, and you can find issues while you're doing it. So the other thing I thought of, well, actually setting up these materials and looking at this thing, I think there are things I can do to this model to make it better, to make it more friendly for texturing and to give it a bit more detail. So the first thing that I thought about was, well, I've got my shape and that's perfect, but I could do with a little bit more geometry. I could do with my polygons not being so elongated. So what I'm going to do for the first part is just grab my loop cut tool and click in the bottom there, and I'm going to increase my number of cuts on this one until I get them about square. So I want them to be roughly square wherever I can. I'm going to have some elongated ones, but generally speaking, for the bigger polygons I want them to be square. So if I do a similar job on each of these sections, whoops, that's too many, just the one, there we go, and then up here we'll put another one in there, and we'll put another one in there as well. So now I have much more equal geometry, except around these windows. I missed that one. Let's do that one. There we go. So that in itself can help in the unwrap process, because if you have long, kind of elongated, mismatched, misshapen polygons, the UV mapping process has a tendency to distort them a bit. So keeping everything nice and neat, will give me a better chance there. So other than that, I thought, well, it's a bit, uniformly shaped, so I wanted to add some detail to it. So in adding my extra geometry, I can now put some localized changes in. So I'm in vertex mode. I'm going to go to the select tool, and I've got a proportional editing on, and I thought where it hit the ground it might be nice if this wasn't quite so straight. So if I press G and Z, I can, whoops, not Z, Shift Z, I can kind of move this out a little bit just to give it a little bit of a curve. And if it's not editing enough, you can go down to your move tools here and increase your proportional size to accommodate. So I was just going to do that on a few around. So select G and then Shift Z, and then just pull it out a bit, just to give it a bit of a more kind of organic shape. It's not organic, obviously. It's a tower. But these things with age have a tendency to kind of crush in on themselves and maybe splay out a bit, and having things too uniform can break a little bit of the magic. So we could do that completely up the tower, but I think that's okay for now. Okay, so in the next little section, what I'm going to do is talk about arranging my UV maps to get some nice optimal detail out of it and get consistent detail across the model, and then we'll go on from there. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so let's go over to the UV room where I've done my UVing, and if I use the material panel here, I can select, say, my main tower material, the tower stone, and that's what it looks like. And it's okay, it's pretty good. you know, everything is there, everything is not very distorted. My issue is that for my other zones, for example the wood zone, if I select that one, there's very few islands in there. It's maybe a 2048 texture, and that's going to be super detailed. But when I do the tower stone, if I have a similar kind of size map, to get the same level of detail out of it, I'm going to need it to be big, you know, maybe 4K, maybe 8K, to get, you know, a consistent detail level. And I'm perhaps not going to get that, but what I can do is separate this out and add to my modelling to make it much easier. So my first point is that these are very long, and you know, even if they stretched right to the top, they wouldn't add an awful lot of detail to it. So I need to change their proportion somehow, but I can't change their proportion because, you know, that's how they are. And if I cut them up with UV seams, I'm going to have seams to deal with, which I don't want to. You know, seams are, you know, to be avoided if at all possible. You can't completely avoid them, of course, but you have to be kind of minimal with them. So what I thought was, if I hid where I would like to put the seams, then I can split these tower sections into 3 pieces. So let's have a go at that. So if I go over to modelling, and what I want is a little thin strip of stone going all the way around my my tower, essentially, so that I can move it over the top of a seam, and that seam will then be hidden. So let's add in a cube. So if we go to add and cube, we get our standard cube there, and we'll scale that. So S and Z. Whoops, I've got proportional editing on, it's my fault, sorry. Right click, let's turn that off. So S and Z to make it a bit thinner. Whoops. And then S and Shift Z to move it out on X and Y. So a strip like that, for example. And then if I move it, G and Z, I can move it up the tower until it's over the top of where I'm going to put a seam. So let's just model this. So I'm going to press Shift and H to hide everything else, and I'm not going to do much with it. I'm going to select the top and the bottom. Actually, what I'm going to do is press A and assign it the correct material. So I want it to be the tower stone. There we go, that's better, it's a better colour. And if I select the top and the bottom polygon, I can use my inset tool, that's the I key, and just bring that in a bit. And that way I'm not going to waste UV space, because if I left it in, then it would have to be included in my UV map, and it's useless. It doesn't do anything. So I want to delete it out so that it gives me more control over my UV space. So let me delete that out, and then we will go to edge mode, and then alt click on the top and shift alt click on the bottom, and put a nice little bevel in. So control B and click, and then we'll just up that until it's nice. There we go, somewhat along those lines. As I said during the tower modelling, I'm exaggerating a bit because it will help see what's going on. So now I need to UV map these parts because I'm going to duplicate it and I don't want to UV it twice. So in edge mode, whoops, that's the wrong button. There we go. In edge mode, I'll press alt and click, and then shift alt click on all of these corner pieces, and then right click and we'll mark that as a seam. And then I'm going to go back to my UV editing room and press A, and then A in the main view, and then have I not deleted something? Something looks like it's there that it shouldn't be. Never mind, we'll soon find out. So right click and unwrap. No, it wasn't, it was just misshapen. So now I've got these nice little pieces, that's good. And I can unhide the model, Shift Alt H rather, and if I select on that piece and point at it and press L and press Shift and D and then right click to pop it back where it started, and then G and Z to move it up to the next spot. Now that's annoying because I want to put it there, but that is going to then interfere with those corners. So what I can do is scale it. So let's do a S and Shift Z to constrain it in X and Y. I'm just going to bring it down a little bit. There we go. So we've got one that's sort of quite far out and one that's quite far in, but both of which are going to hide some seams. So let's select all of our tower stone material, and I'm going to press Shift H to hide everything else. I'm just going to pack it so I can see what's going on. So UV and pack islands. Whoops, need to select them all first with the A key. So UV and pack. Make sure I've got rotate off because I've carefully rotated all sorts of things. These need scaling down, so I'm just going to point at each and press L, press S to scale. I'm going to bring them down, whoops, a little bit, and then again. These also need rotating because they should be going across these tower pieces, and currently they're a bit vertical. So I'm going to press R and rotate, and then when I get close I'm going to press the control key to constrain. So I'm going to press A, UV map, back islands, make sure my rotate is off. Okay, so that's prepped us to change our UVs here. So in the next one what we're going to do is select those faces, add some seams and re-UV them. And then following that we're going to maximize our space. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so let's press A to select everything, and now I can see what's going on over here. So the bits I want to re-UV are, whoops, that was the wrong key, sorry, these pieces here. So if I just select those and press Shift H, whoops, that's unhidden more than I expected. Well, these bits here, I was going to hide them to isolate, but it's not very good at that, unfortunately. So what I want to do is cut this where these horizontals are, and I can kind of estimate that, or I could cheat a bit. So if I select on one of these edges here and then press L to select the linked, I'm just going to move this up a little bit, and now I'm going to select this line here. So if I select these edges going across our model, we can mark those as a seam, and then I could just pop it back again rather than trying to figure out where it is on the UV. Right, I'm pressing L here, and you might notice it's not selecting everything, and that's because it's slipped into seam mode. So I just want to slip that back to normal, and then it will select everything linked. So G and Z, and just pop that down. There we go. So let's do the same here. So L, G and Z, and move it up, and then we'll select our edges and mark those as seams. There we go, and now let's go back to poly mode and L, there we go, G and Z, let's pop that back down again. There we go. So now for this face, you know, I can unwrap it. I'm going to do the other ones between videos because you don't want me to watch me doing it 4 times. So I'm just going to press, whoops, click off and then press A, and I happen to believe that this is the one, so I'm going to press L on this one and then Shift H and then U and unwrap, and now I've got 3 islands which can be arranged in a much more useful way. So if I go to UV and pack islands, let it rotate this time, because the first rotate it will try and get it right, but often I will correct some of it and then turn that off. So now I've got 3 islands, and that doesn't necessarily help me in the broad scheme of UV mapping, because if I come back over here and click off and then press A, you'll see they're all overlapping, and if I pack these, whoops, where's pack gone? There it is. Let's turn rotate off this time. Even once I've selected these and reduced them down to the correct size or a closer size, so S, and it's somewhere about there, and then whoops, A and repack, I haven't really gained much, so we need to do something else to optimize our UV space. So what we'll do in the next video is we're going to have a look to move these to different UDIM tiles. So I will talk to you then. Okay, so UDIMs. So if I increase the number of UDIMs in this, I can separate my UVs into separate paintable textures, and that gives us a little bit of leeway to optimize and change things. So to do that, if you press the N key, you'll get this little panel up here, and if you come down to view, we can change the UDIM grid. Now I currently have 4 textures. I may not end up with 4 textures, I may end up with 1. So what I'm going to do is create a grid which will accommodate my 4. So if I increase my grid shape X and Y here, see the top one is horizontal, the bottom one is vertical. I'm going to create 4 vertical, 1 for each of my materials currently, and I'm going to create maybe 5 horizontal, and within these 5 horizontal ones for say my tower stone material, I'm going to put a face on, or one of the faces, and then we're going to deal with these verticals separately. So let's go and find our original. Which one have I done? I don't know which one I've done now. Right, so this one, for example, if I hit L, and this one are 2 of my sides that I've done. This is one thing that really kind of bugs me about Blender, and it might be that I'm just not very bright, but it's difficult to tell which side you're looking at. But I can see now I'm looking at this side because I've got that polygon highlighted, and that's that one. Okay, so if I shift click on the top, perhaps I'll be able to identify which one that is. No, that is that one. Okay, so it's that one and it's that one, and let's just move those aside. So I'm going to move this to this UDIM square, and then I'm going to try and find my other one, which seems to be missing. It's not, it's this one. So it's that one, so I'm going to press G and move that over, and now I want this piece and this piece. So now if I press L, I do want it to go to the seam because I only want that piece, and I want that piece as well, and also that piece and that piece. So those are part of that side, so I'm going to move those into that UV. Okay, now if I select everything, I should have all of my face details on one in this second UDIM tile. And if I now go to UV and pack, there is a new option within 3 where it will pack to the closest UDIM or the active UDIM, whichever is useful. So I moved them onto the closest UDIM, or the UDIM I wanted them in, and repacked, and now it's done the job. But I can see that I've missed a polygon, which is annoying. So let me just undo that. Just go backwards until I've undone that particular error. Sometimes it's easy just to go backwards, frankly. Right, so that one, have I deleted a polygon? Is that what I've done? No? Right. So now that my link is just going to the bounds of the UV island, I can select all these separately. There we go. And I've just noticed that I need to do my windows as well in some cases, so I'm going to move those over, so G and Z, and then I'm going to select my window pieces. So let's have that as well, and that one. This is where it gets fiddly, and one of the reasons I haven't sort of shown you how I UV this, because I have a few other tutorials on which show you that, and I thought you'd get bored. So let's move those in. So G and Z, that's okay. And I'll just select everything in this UV here, and whoops, UV and pack. And there we have it. Now we've got one face on one map, which is going to increase our texture density, because now I'm going to have 3 maps, it's true, but even at say at 1024 resolution, I'm going to get better resolution out of that than say a 2K map for everything. Okay, so I'm going to do that process for the rest of the faces, and then we'll go on to doing the pillars. So I'll talk to you then. Right then, so let me just press A to select everything, and you'll see I've got my islands all in a row, and they're all looking nice. This one's a bit misshapen. We're going to do something about that in a moment, but for the moment I want to concentrate on these pillars at the side. So these pillars at the side are a pain. So I'm just pressing L on each of these, and I've got it in to UVC mode, and you can see over on our UV we've got one upside down and one the wrong way round, but apart from that, it's okay. Now it is going to be difficult, no matter what I do here, without modelling to the nth degree, to put bricks in this, because I've chosen to unwrap them as a single whole, and that's going to cause a lot of distortion in a map, and then putting nice brick mortar things and square shapes in there is going to be difficult. So I've kind of decided for these that they're actually going to be just a stone material, but for that I would need to differentiate them from the actual brick material. So what we're going to do is add a little bit of geometry. So what I'm going to do is just overlap this and bring in like a strip down, which is going to, in a more grounded way, join these pillars to this brick structure. Okay, so we can do that in a couple of ways, but all I'm going to do is press Alt and click down there, and Alt and click, whoops, no, Shift Alt and click down there. So I've got polygons that are following that line very well at the moment. So I can split them, copy them, and then extrude them. So let's do that. So split them first. Let's go back to the modelling room, it's easier in there. There we go. I'm just going to use this split tool here, and I'm going to click and drag and bring it closer to the edge, and the same on the other side. There we go. And then in polygon mode, I'll come out of that cut mode there and Alt and select close to the bottom, and then Shift Alt. Oh, too far away. Shift Alt and click down there. There we go. And then Shift D to duplicate, and then right click to put it back where it started, and then G, and will this be X? No, it will be Y. There we go. Just going to bring it out a little bit. Excuse me. So they're not quite wide enough at the moment, so we can deal with that just with a little cheeky trick. If I scale them, so S, and this will be X. There we go. I can scale them out until they intersect with the actual pillar. And you can see they're, you know, not completely straight depending upon where it is, and that's fine, but they're a bit thicker than I want. So in edge mode, I'm going to Alt and click on one of these outside edges. Oops, and then Shift Alt. No, I need to do them one at a time. Come on, John, wake up. If you want to take some of this undulation out, we can use S and X just to flatten it a bit. Oops, just a little bit. Not so much that it's completely straight. There we go. And then G and X, and we'll move it inwards a bit. There we go. And we'll do the same on the other side. This one's pretty straight, so I don't have to worry about that too much. So G and X, I'm just going to move it in a little bit. Now, if I select the other side as well with Shift Alt and click, we can then just extrude this backwards. So let's do that. So we'll hit extrude and grab and move it backwards. And now we've got what almost looks like a structure. So we're going to have like stone stroke concrete for our beams and our pillars, and we'll have some brick in our other areas. Okay, so one last thing, as we do or as we ever do, going to Alt and Shift Alt click on that one, Alt click, Shift Alt click, and then Control B, and we'll pop a little bevel in. Just click, and then we can use our width here to sort that out. And how soft you make it or how tight you make it is entirely up to you. There we go. So in our interims, interim video, the bits where I'm not on screen, I'm going to repeat that around, and then we'll come back and do some mapping. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so I've repeated that around the model, and I've just got them selected, and I want to UV map them. But as you can see with these red lines, it's inherited a lot of seams. So what I want to do is select everything and then right click and clear seams. Don't want any seams on it at all. And then over in the UV view, press U and unwrap, and they should unwrap pretty straight. Okay, so let's select everything over here now. So press the A key, and now I just really want to work on these bits over here. So let's press L on those two. There we go, and that should be it. Now if I pack these now, so it's UV and pack islands, I'm going to leave rotate on to get a bit of chance. You'll see that these are too long because I unwrapped them in isolation. So I'm just going to select these long strips here, and use the S key to scale them down to about the same size as the actual pillars themselves. That's a little bit small. There we go. Just move them into place. Okay, so with that all selected, I'm going to repack now, and I should get a little bit more out of my map. So let's pack those. Not an awful lot more, but yeah, enough. Now this one's upside down, so let me press L on that one and we'll rotate. And when I get up to about vertical, I'll press Control to snap. That doesn't need a repack, that's good. And what else have we got? Not a lot. I'm curious as to what these are. I just don't know. I shall investigate that and come back. Anyway, so now I've got a map, and I've got a couple of things to do with it. But I've got five maps essentially to work with. You know, if I'd packed all these onto a single map, and there were 4, for example, I'd get 1024 out of each of them, maybe. But because I've separated them out, and because we've UV'd as we've UV'd, we're going to get much more texture detail out of it, yeah, than we would have done otherwise. And we've hidden some seams, and our model looks a bit nicer, which is all a bonus. Right, so in the next one I'm going to fix a couple of things that I know need fixing, and then perhaps we'll go on to separate the other ones out, the other zones. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so let's have a look at this. So we've got a couple of problems, and these little vertices, or these little islands here, don't look right to me. I don't think they should be there. And this island is a bit misshapen, so let's deal with this first. So first thing I do is if I press L on a selection in the 3D view with to seam selected, it's going to select everything selected. But a better way of doing it is if I move this to normal, it will select sort of whole chunks of model. And with that, if I select the tower, I can see that that's where my issue is. So I'm just going to hide everything else in the 3D viewport, and then for this, I think this is probably an error on my part. So if I go to the modeling room where I can see everything and have a look for my tools, mesh and clean up, there's a couple of things I like to run here. So delete loose to start with, and that's not deleted anything. And then I'll select everything again, and then go to mesh and clean up and merge by distance, and that's cleaned up a whole bunch of vertices which I've obviously cocked up somewhere along the line, excuse my French. Okay, so let's go back to the UV editing room, and now I can see that those particular issues have gone. So if I press A in here, I've lost those little errors, and you know, I'm happy about that. Okay, so the other thing is this island here. Now this island is a pain. I'm going to select it and then press Shift H. It's done it again. I don't know why it keeps doing that. So let's Control Z. We can just do it here. Okay, so this island I've got selected, and it's all a bit misshaped. It's too misshaped. I don't mind a little misshape, you know, having it a little misshapen, but I do mind it being you know, quite this far out. So what we can do here is use the pins function. So if I go to vertex mode, I want to start to pin things. So for example, this pin and this down here, or this vertex and this vertex, ought to be lined up, as should this one and this one and this one and this one. So what I'm going to do to start with is select each of my corners and then right click and pin. And now under the UV options, I'm going to make sure I've got live unwrap selected. And now if I select one of these pins and move it, nothing happens. But if I select one of these pins and move it, it will unwrap the model for me. So I'm going to select these two and press S and scale them in. And I'm just going to scale them in on X to line them up. And then this one and this one, we use scale and Y and flatten those up a bit. And then this one and this one, if I press S and Y, I can flatten them up. Now you'll see it's flapping around all over the place now. Well, that's fine, because I can just grab this one and move that one down in isolation. Okay, so that's better, but it's not great. We could pin all sorts of things. In fact, I'm going to pin right down this side here, and similarly down here. And then I can adjust each of these pins individually to straighten them up a bit and get them in a more sensible kind of look. As I said, I'm not too fussed about having a bit of deformation, a bit of randomness. Let's pop that one up a bit. There we go. But I don't want it to be so random that it, really misshapen. So down here, I think we want to do these as well, or at least a couple of them. The ones perhaps there. So if I pin those, I can grab on and use G to move it down. Similarly for this one. Let's pin that one there and move that up. So just move it around until it's got to a state that you're happy with it. As I said, it doesn't have to be perfect, because a little bit of UV distortion can add a little bit of organicness to your material. And also, with projection options, you've got the option to override it essentially. Okay, so let me unhide everything over this way. Stop pressing U, John. So Alt H, and I want to now select all of my just tower material and have a look at it. So that looks good, I think. We've got some consistent bits. We've got 5 maps to work with, and all I need to do now is go through the rest of them and figure out what I'm going to do with them. Okay, so I will talk to you then. Right, so I'm just going to select these one by one. So let's click off there and select the roof tile. So these roof tiles are okay, but if I utilise more than one UDIM, I can make them better. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I suspect that if I take 4 of these and then move them, I'm going to move them up a level, and then right click and pack, not right click. I don't know why I'm obsessed with it being on the right click. My brain just doesn't get it. Right, there we go. And so let's turn rotate off there. So now I've got some much bigger islands, which is going to give me a better kind of resolution. And if we just move that up to there and then don't right click and pack islands, we've got consistency across all of them, and we've got enough space. On the pack, actually, let me just go back to pack, see how much of a border I've got on here. Yeah, 0.1 or 0.01, that should be okay. Right, so that's my top. So let's go from top to bottom. I've done stone, windows and doors, so we'll select that. I've got a door over here for some reason, I don't know why. So the door and the windows, they're going to be a bit different. So the top windows I intend to sort of board up with some wood, and this will be wood as well. So you know, I'm mulling whether to have two or not. So let me just move them up. Let me move this one over first with the G key. Come on, John, what's going on? Why has my brain suddenly decided not to work? It seems stuck. Will these move? Yes. There's obviously something there that I'm not associating, and it's probably because there's no seam around it, or not enough of a seam around it. Let me have a look. There isn't. So let me pop some seams in. So if I alt click there and shift alt click there, and then right click and mark C. I think it's joined to an island that, you know, doesn't want to let go of it, essentially. So let's select that material again and select this. I'm going to unwrap it just to confirm what's going on, and now it's moved over here. Excellent. So let's pack those. So UV unwrap and pack. I'm going to put rotation on this time. I think this is upside down. So I'm going to select that one and use rotate, and then Control to snap it. Right, so the consideration I'm thinking of here, if I move these up to where I want them, more or less, is that, let me repack in situ. There we go. Do I have enough geometry, or not geometry, enough texture space to get some good textures out of this? And I think if I take the smaller windows, these ones, which are largely going to be black and not an awful lot else, and put them on to a different UDIM, I'm going to get a little bit more out of this. So I'm going to move those to there and then pack them, and then I can repack these. Where are we? There it is. And that will give me a little bit more. I think separating them any more than that is probably going to be a bit of overkill, but you know, we shall see. Okay, so I've got one last set of polygons to move, and that's these. So that's the wood that makes up our little kind of loading balcony up there, and for these ones I'm quite happy. Everything's in the right direction and everything's good. I think we'll get enough resolution out of that because I'm not going to get that close to it. So I'm just going to move that up to our top one and then pack it to make sure it's in the right place. There we go. So now if I select everything, I've got my UDims arranged, and I've got them arranged in quite a nice way. I've got all of my tower along the bottom. You know, each row is its own kind of material zone, and you know, now I could not use material zones, but I'm a bit traditional. I like a material zone, so I'm going to leave them there. Okay, so that was that for that, and I just wanted to go through a bit of, you know, what I do when prepping for texturing. I know I haven't done the full unwrap process, but you know, I've covered the basics of that in some other videos. So I hope you found that interesting, and I hope it gives you some, you know, thoughts about how you can use that in your own process. So I will talk to you another time.